Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the White House. And welcome to this exciting roundtable on STEM for girls in STEM roundtable. I want to start by thanking the White House Council on Women and Girls and Sarah Horowitz, who has invited most of you here and made sure that we put this together, invited me here. I am thrilled to be here today to be able to host what I think is going to be a wonderful discussion. We're so happy to have you here, but also happy to have all the folks who are watching us online and in their classrooms. We're very glad that you can join us as well. Let me also say how exciting it is to see so many incredible young leaders and young women in our audience today. As many of you may know, I am the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I know it's a mouthful. We call it EPA. At the EPA, science is the backbone of every decision we make and every action that we take. With that in mind, it should come as no surprise that I believe STEM education is critical to our country's future, and that as a woman scientist, bringing more young women into STEM is something I'm very passionate about. There is a great need, but it's also a great opportunity to engage young women in STEM education and encourage them to seek careers in STEM fields. Now, like the women in this room, I've had an interest in math and science since I was young. At the time, it didn't strike me as all that unique. You see, I went to an all-girls school in my hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana, and like all of the other young women in my class, I tried my hardest, I worked hard, and did as well as I could. It really wasn't until college, when I began studying chemical engineering at Tulane University, that I found myself, in most cases, to be one of the few women in my class. As you can imagine, it was a bit of a shock for me after going to an all-girls high school. I saw much the same thing as I went on to pursue my master's degree in chemical engineering at Princeton University, where my classmates and instructors were also predominantly men. Now, things have gotten better. When I was a student, about 154,000 women were pursuing master's degrees in science and engineering across the country. By 2003, about 20 years later, that number had grown to 270,000. 50 years ago, 10% of the doctorates in science and engineering went to women. Today, that number has grown to 40%. This weekend, I spent some time talking to brilliant young college women who were part of scientific teams that submitted projects to EPA's People, Prosperity, and the Planet competition. In the last 2 years, we've seen some great examples of young women scientists at the White House Science Fair. And I took note last year when young women took top honors in all 3 age groups in the first ever Google Science Fair. So the future is looking very, very bright indeed. Each year, a new class of young women graduates from America's colleges and universities. They're eager to take their jobs and places in math and science, to become doctors, to become engineers, to become CEOs, to become teachers. But even with all that progress, you all know we still have work to do. For one thing, we know that adding more women to STEM fields would undoubtedly benefit our economy. It's clear that much of our future prosperity rests on new innovations and advances in scientific and technical and medical fields. President Obama has made it a priority to invest in research and development, not only because American scientists and inventors are doing work critical on public health or energy security, but also because we know that new ideas lead to new opportunities for American workers. Think of how far we've already come. Think how many next big things we've already seen. And for most of our history, half of our team of innovators was sitting on the sidelines. It's exciting to imagine what can happen once those talents are also unleashed. Bringing more women into STEM fields can also have a positive effect on science itself. Whenever I meet and talk with young women, I encourage them to throw out their stereotypical ideas of what a scientist is supposed to look like. Being a scientist doesn't have to mean, although it can mean, but it doesn't have to mean being in a lab all by yourself, happiest with your test tubes. It can mean that if that's what you want it to mean. but it can also mean getting out in the community and talking to people and working with them to improve their lives. It can mean taking action to protect children's health. It can mean helping impoverished communities around the world get access to clean water, or finding solutions to rebuild ecosystems for endangered species. The traditional impression of science and scientists is that they are detached and maybe a little antisocial. But the truth is that science touches our daily lives, and we need more women and men studying science as a way to make our lives better. Now, I want to save as much time for our panel discussion as possible, so let me stop there to introduce our video. It's titled Girls in STEM. This tells the story of the brilliant young women scientists and engineers who participated in the White House Science Fair not too long ago. It was really something to see. I'm very glad to share it with you and to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
The belief that we belong on the cutting edge of innovation, that's an idea as old as America itself. It's in our DNA. We know that what these young people are doing, this is what's going to make a difference in this country over the long haul.
I created a nanoparticle that's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of cancer treatment.
A UV light lunchbox that kills bacteria off fruits and food.
My project was I actually built a detection method for buried landmines.
I did my project on sheep genetics and Cotswold sheep, the natural color versus the white genes.
The smartphone works with a Bluetooth-enabled heart rate monitor to detect if there's a medical emergency and then notify contacts with where you are, what happened, what's going on, where they can find you.
We created an adaptive hand device for a girl in Georgia.
So did you play the game or you designed the game?
I designed it.
You designed the game. Sheesh. That's pretty impressive.
So current cancer treatments, there are two major problems. First, it's not specific towards cancer cells, so it kills normal cells in addition to cancer cells. So that has very low patient quality of life. And then the second problem is although it kills the majority of cancer cells, it doesn't really kill the source of cancer cells. So my nanoparticle can detect cancer cells in the body, eradicate the cancer cells, and then monitor the treatment response. The objective of this project really was just to personalize cancer treatment to make it more effective and how it can overcome a problem that all of society is facing.
We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Go cure cancer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
First of all, I have cousins who live in Mozambique and have to deal with the daily threat of landmines. I heard their stories and was really inspired by what they had to say. So while all this was running through my head, I was at the piano one night playing the piano, and I noticed that when I played certain chords or notes, the strings on a nearby banjo would resonate. And so I heard that and made the connection and thought, maybe I can use the same principle to detect buried landmines. So I started doing this kind of research and somehow ended up at the White House.
So this has just a very direct application to the sheep that are on your farm.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
There's only 2,500 registered Cotswolds in the United States, and that includes white and natural colored. Over the years, the people in the Cotswold industry have bred out the natural colors because the fiber artists want just the white wool to dye and use for different things. But now that people have realized there's such a decline in the numbers of natural colors, they're really trying to breed them back and pull them back into the industry. But it's really, really hard to get those high quality natural colored sheep because the genetic gene pool is so low. When you go to look for natural color sheep, it's really difficult to find them, and it's been my passion to breed and bring the natural colors back into the industry. I wanted to be in the fiber industry and have livestock and have the sheep so that I could learn more for myself about the animals in the livestock industry and just take part in that core agriculture process.
I did not realize that ultraviolet light can actually kill bacteria.
Yes.
I did not realize that. Well, that's a pretty spiffy invention.
First, you put the fruit in. Then you close the lid. You turn it on. You wait for 10 seconds. After those 10 seconds, you open the lunchbox. You simply take your fruit out and you eat it. A lunchbox that helps people. I never thought I could do that.
The ultimate goal was to help Danielle to write with her preferred hand.
She is right hand dominant, and she didn't have most of the fingers on her right hand, and she really wanted to write with her right hand, so we decided that we would help her write.
I know something about living with a limb difference because I have one myself. So we began to make prototypes for how to help her hold a pencil. And we ended up using a simple design of a platform and a cylinder adjacent to it in which you could insert a pencil. And it just strapped onto her hand, and then she started to write.
The first thing we want to show you is usually the user can check your status by clicking on the status button. And you can see I'm a little nervous, so my heart rate's a little high. We do have a series of checks to ensure that there are no false alarms. And let's say you do not press the check because you actually are in need of help. It starts issuing a loud audible alert as well.
As you'll see, emergency has been detected.
It's saying a medical emergency has been detected. The next thing that happens is a text message is automatically sent to her cell phone, and at the same time, your medical information is displayed on the screen, so paramedics and anyone else that shows up can see your past history and things like that, which could be helpful in the event of emergency.
One of the huge advantages of ours is that you don't actually need to press a button to summon help, because when you need help the most is when you can't get it yourself.
The most unique thing about it is it is mobile. You can take it anywhere. This is on your cell phone, which is something most people carry around all the time. So I think that's an awesome feature. And also, as Ada mentioned, the fact that it's passive. You don't actually have to press the button. In the event of a heart attack, it will automatically send alerts to your contacts.
This is an idea that really resonated with all of us. We all have relatives that aren't living with us, in the house, who are far away. I know my grandfather had a stroke in the backyard, and we didn't know exactly what was going on for a while, and I always kind of wondered, what if we'd been able to find him sooner or whatever. So this is just to kind of give them that security of having family members when they need them.
In this game, I want people to be environmental, pretty much. What the game is about, it's there's polluting factories in the city, and the other people can't breathe. So this one right here has to pretty much go around and collect like coins and hearts and get their score to 500, so they can win the game and people can breathe better.
It's really cool, though.
Thanks.
How long did it take you to design it?
A couple months.
So you want to be a game designer?
Maybe.
Yeah, you're only 5th grade. You don't have to make up your mind now. It's young people like you that make me so confident that America's best days are still to come. When you work and study and excel at what you're doing in math and science, when you compete in something like this, you're not just trying to win a prize today, you're getting America in shape to win the future.
What I would say to people, especially girls, who are interested in STEM activities is that you should be.
Find other people who have similar interests, and I think working in a team helps a lot. Like, you can bounce ideas off of each other. You're not on your own.
Just go out there and go for it and do it. I mean, there are infinite possibilities. You can do anything you want. Just being a woman doesn't hold you back from anything.
I feel like I can make a difference and develop technology that's really going to help people.
As a kid, I asked a lot of why questions, and I found that science and math usually were the answers, the coolest answers to all of my why questions.
By knowing that your ideas might change the future, it's something that I like.
I mean, it's a great field for everybody, and there's nothing that should hold women back or put men in front of us.
Don't give up on the first thing that doesn't work out. Keep going, keep trying until you succeed. And after you succeed, keep going and keep going.
Don't be shy. Try your hardest to do what you can do, because sometimes if you try hard enough, you can make it come true.
How about that? And to my point, there was not one girl, young woman in that video whose project didn't center around helping people, making life better for someone, that their projects were inspired by noticing something. And I think that that's one of the things that women bring is compassion to our field in a different way. So now it is my extraordinary honor to introduce our panelists and begin our conversation. Please join me in welcoming each of them as they take their place on the panel. First, we'll begin with Dr. Katie Coleman. Katie is a NASA scientist with over 180 days in space. She flew 2 missions aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia and spent 159 days aboard the International Space Station last year as the lead robotics and science officer. Dr. Coleman came to NASA in 1992 with a BS in chemistry from MIT and a PhD in polymer science and engineering from the University of Massachusetts. Commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force in 1983, she retired in 2009 as a colonel. Our second panelist is Jocelyn Goldfein. Jocelyn is the Director of Engineering at Facebook, where she helps manage the engineering team and drive products like Newsfeed, Photos, and Search. Prior to Facebook, Jocelyn was an engineering leader at VMware and helped grow the R&D team from 100 to over 2,000, ultimately serving as Vice President of Desktop Products. Other career highlights include co-founding a startup. Jocelyn has a BS in computer science from Stanford University. Jocelyn. We could so guess she was from Facebook. Bianca Bailey is a senior chemical engineering major at Howard University here in Washington, D.C. And as the president of the Howard University chapter of Engineers Without Borders, Bianca has volunteered for the last 2 years in Kenya and has worked on development projects in Brazil and Haiti. She's conducted groundbreaking research in the field of nanotechnology and will be attending the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign for a master's degree in environmental engineering. And Dr. Jean Hernandez is president of Edmonds Community College in Linwood, Washington, and has over 30 years of experience in higher education. Edmonds Community College has received over $3.5 million in National Science Foundation STEM grants and considers itself a hub for STEM educational pathways. Dr. Hernandez serves on the board of College Spark Washington and a number of workforce and economic development boards, as well as being an active member of the American Association of Community Colleges. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hernandez. Okay, women, I'm going to start with a couple of questions before we open it up to the audience, and we're also going to have questions coming in from those who tweet, so from Twitter, right? All right, so let me throw this one out, and then if each one of you can take a turn at answering, it'd be great. Please tell us about one of the coolest, most exciting experiences you've had during your STEM career. And Dr. Hernandez, maybe it'd be great if you could talk about the exciting careers that students at your college are pursuing with their STEM degrees. We'll start, yeah.
Well, I knew coming from NASA, first of all, I had to wear my jacket, because otherwise, how would you know? And that is why we're here, is, you know, women can do all sorts of things, and often we, you know, the people around us don't think that. And no matter what the first question was going to be, I was determined that I would get to just show you a little bit about what my world is like, so that you could realize, A, how much goes into it, and B, that it's your world too. So Chris, if you could do the slides. So this was my home for 159 days, International Space Station. I loved it. Next. And this is just a little 2-minute kind of video that's just going to show you a little bit about what it's like to go up there and be part of this. And when I was your age, no one would have looked at me in high school and said, yeah, she'll be on that space station. You know, she'll be living right there with 5 other people, happens to be guys in this case, but we certainly have both men and women living on the space station at any one time. And I don't think anybody understood that I would be practicing putting on a spacesuit, learning about the Russian spacesuit. I launched and landed in Russia. I learned about the US spacesuit and all that, and actually years and years of practicing and training. And it's not as if I am the smartest one in the whole room here or even in the crowd that I'm there with. It is that I've worked hard to create some opportunities, and those put me on here on launch night. This is my family, my son and my husband on launch night. I will tell you, saying goodbye is very difficult, and yet they understand that this is something that's really important to me, that space exploration is something that people just do, and I happen to be one of them. Of course, I'm the one that has to beg the boys to walk slowly and take small steps. But up there, it doesn't matter what size you are. And it's a really big deal when people leave the planet. And a lot of us have the talents that we need. A bachelor's degree and 3 years experience is the minimum requirement to be an astronaut, to sit in this seat. It's not so much, but you need that technical degree to be here in the Soyuz. There's 3 of us that go up at a time. So we're in the Soyuz. We docked with the space station right before last Christmas. So about a bit over a year ago. And this is my favorite part of the whole movie because it's not about floating around in space. It is about flying. And flying right next to us, and this is important to see, is this supply ship. And it was my job as the lead robotics officer to control the robotic arm, reach out, grab that, and then attach it to the International Space Station. And it's something I trained for, I worked for. I also had very good hair up there, I think you can see. And Chris, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So just a few slides. I just want to emphasize the robotics here. There's only 2 of us. If you could go to the next slide, Chris. The 2 of us that have ever done this reached out with the robotic arm, grappled a free-flying supply ship, and it's going to happen again in the next few weeks when SpaceX launches their supply ship to the International Space Station. I think the new date for that is May 7th. It's been a tiny bit delayed, but you know what? In the space business, we go when we're ready. And if you could go to the next slide. Nicole Stott and I are actually the only 2 people on the planet or off the planet that have captured supply ships. And right now, Don Pettit is scheduled to do this, but it's been delayed. It might delay all the way until Sunny Williams gets up there, and then it will actually begin to be perhaps a trend that only girls can capture supply ships. Next. I trained for spacewalks, never got to do one, but I was ready. That was the important part. Next. We did a lot of science experiments. It's a fluids experiment. Next. A lot of different kinds of medical experiments. Next. That's our freezer. Some cool robotics. This is Robonaut, our 7th crew member. Next. So and if you could kill the sound, Chris, that'd be great. We do a lot of science, but there's magic in science and engineering, and it's just plain old fun. Next, Chris. I'm a musician, an amateur one, but I like to play, so I brought my flute and others up with me. Those are Irish flutes. Next. And this is our window on the world. I like this picture because the space station looks small and the Earth looks big, which it does when you're up there. It's a very special view. And the reason I share these pictures is, maybe to brag just a little bit, but really to share with you that this is an amazing world, and you and your friends could be part of it. Next. This is, and you should learn your geography before you go, but this is a beautiful picture of Italy. Next. Where I'm from, Cape Cod, Long Island, New York City, New England. Next. And then seen in a different way that kind of, to me, shares the sentiment of seeing a place that you know and you love and your whole family's there, and then realizing you're going to leave it in just a second because you go so fast, but you'll be back. Next. This is where we take those pictures from. Next, the cupola. And this picture is not me, but Dr. Tracy Caldwell, a fellow chemist. And I love this picture because it is a picture of a human being in space, looking back at the planet we come from, and there's no way that only guys should be in a picture like this. It's all, and I'm not saying that to be funny, it kind of is, but it's because we are part of the planet, and we bring a lot to the planet, and if you start doing things without the talents that women bring, you are just not doing them good enough. Next. So this is some of our other women from NASA. Peggy Whitson was the commander of the space station at the time. She's now the chief of the astronaut office. Pam Melroy, the commander of the space shuttle. And Sandy Magnus, next. So your face belongs here. And that's why we're here today. Thank you very much.
Jocelyn. Oh my goodness. That's a tall act to follow. I'm a software engineer by training, and so what I do for a living is make software, or more recently lead teams that make software. And I think one of the coolest things about software is that you start with absolutely nothing. You have a computer, you have your brain, and you can create something from nothing. And generally that's, and the first time that happens, it's like magic. It's like, wow, I made magic happen, because now there's something here where there was nothing before. And so the first time, that's just a thrill. If you love to make things, any kinds of things, if you're artistic or creative, then that feeling of creating software out of nothing is satisfying in and of itself. Something that for me is even as much or more motivating as that is when what I've created, what I've made, gets used by other people. And so there have been so many thrilling moments from, I would say, the first time after college when I really built some software and we put it in production with a customer, and I kind of had that sinking but sort of frightening but still thrilling sensation of, oh, this is not a homework assignment anymore. This is actually real, and if I messed it up, then like someone's going to have trouble doing their jobs. But if I did it right, then this is really going to help people out. And I think that there is probably very few software companies on the planet right now where you get more of that kind of sense of satisfaction than Facebook. Because when I build a new feature on Facebook, when we shipped the new homepage last fall, we are literally touching hundreds of millions of people on this planet who use that, who depend on it, who rely on it to keep in touch with friends, to share news, to find out what's going on in each other's lives. And one of the features that I contributed to in that homepage launch, it's not actually visible, but it's a feature we call Major Life Events, which is that we figured out that one thing that makes people really unhappy is when they, check Facebook sporadically and then they miss big news. A friend had a baby or got into college, and they missed it. They didn't see it on Facebook, and there's so many sort of sad stories where that happens, and there's no reason. We have all the data we need in the back end to know when something really important and exciting happens to you, because that story is full of likes and full of comments from people saying, congratulations, oh my goodness, wish I was there. And so by analyzing that data, we can tell that this is a story none of your friends should miss and run it at the very top of their feeds and make sure that it doesn't sort of fade off the page. So just that one little change sort of remarkably changes the character of what you see every day. Make sure you don't miss those important moments. And knowing that touches so many people around the planet, but also especially so many people that are personally my friends and family, that was really fulfilling.
Yeah. For me, one of my most exciting experiences is just being a woman in STEM, a young woman in STEM. Being a young woman in STEM means that there are lots of opportunities allotted to you, and especially to me. And the big thing is, if you can take advantage of all the opportunities that it has to offer, trust me, it will benefit you greatly. And I'm sure all of these ladies on the panel can attest to that. I am a part of Engineers Without Borders, and we currently have a project in Kenya. And this project in Kenya is a water filtration project, and where we will be traveling in this May, to implement biosand filters. And these biosand filters will help clean at a household level for the people in the community. They'll help to clean the river water that they use every day. So for me as a young woman, service is very important to me, community service, and to be able to do engineering on a global level for free, and just to do something that I love every day. It's a field that I enjoy, and I just want everyone to know that if you can find something that you like for yourself and you can find that in engineering, trust me, you'll be successful and you'll go a long way.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, first of all, Edmonds Community College takes a lot of pride in being very innovative and creative in how we do things. We have a center called the Washington Aerospace Training and Research Center, and one of the things that's been really neat about that program is you go for 6 weeks and get your first certificate. It's a short-term certificate, full-time, and then you go another 6 weeks. So when you have 2 certificates, aerospace companies and Boeing are ready to hire you. And a lot of times people think you have to have a 4-year degree to really get into the STEM fields, and it's not necessarily true. There's a great need for what we call technicians, and those usually require either certificates or 2-year degrees. But let me tell you a little bit about water. One of the things they're doing is what's called Cool Girls in Aerospace, and I'm hoping that as I speak, other high schools and community colleges, universities will think of some of these ideas. But one of the things that's so neat is that the girls come and they actually get to work with composites and make a composites tray. And composites are, where you're looking at different materials that are lightweight but very sturdy. And so they get to play around with different types of things like that, and they make this trinket box. And then they take CATIA, which is a kind of software, and they design their own keychain. So after 9 hours of this Cool Girls in Aerospace Day, they have something to take home with them and hopefully get excited about the materials they've been working with. One of our students from Water, who graduated about probably a year ago now, got her first job with a major aerospace company. And this individual has gone so fast up the food chain. And again, this is a great time to be working in aerospace. She is now, basically a year later, making $100,000 a year. And part of that is because hardworking, good work ethic, and also great skills. And this person will probably not come back for a bachelor's degree, but she'll probably continue to do professional development throughout her career. Another area that we have that we're very proud of is our robotics electronics program and also our material science program. And those are, again, other areas where you can work, with different kinds of either, information technology, or you can work with the robotics program, as you saw in the video, where you're building things that actually do things that maybe we don't want humans to be doing, or other people to have to be, touching. Sort of like the aerospace piece here, get a little help when you have to reach out, into space. One of the other things that we're doing is called expanding your horizons, and I don't know if it's pretty well known nationally, but that's one program that if you as a girl have a chance to go to expanding your horizons, it's usually for either high school girls or for middle school girls, where they focus on STEM speakers. So all your speakers are in STEM fields and they're women. And I'm going to finish with just one last story. We also have a nursing program, and for us it's a licensed practical nursing program that's part-time and mostly online. But the idea is that it's to be accessible. It's to make it easy for individuals that maybe need to work, either part-time or full-time, can still go to college and get their degrees and complete them. And we have recently had 2 different groups graduate. And one of my favorite stories is of a woman who nobody in her family had ever had a college degree. And now she's a licensed practical nurse, and her hope is to become a registered nurse. And I have no doubt she's going to do it, and she's probably going to be running, the whole, ward or the whole floor before long, because she just has that kind of drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. Now we're about to go to questions from our audience, so get ready. But many of you touched on this, but I'll ask you very quickly, just if you had one or 2 sentence piece of advice for not only the young women here, but remember, lots of young women who are listening or will be listening to this broadcast. Just think about that for a second. I'll go first. It's very, very short, which is you don't have to know exactly what kind of scientist or engineer or technician you want to be right now to make part of who you are being a dedication to excelling in science and math. Math is the language of science. There are all kinds of scientists out there. There are all kinds of engineers out there. I'm an engineer who does really public policy for a living. That's what I've come to do. It is a wonderful platform from which to build a career. So don't feel bad if you're sitting there like, well, I'm not sure which one of these, if any, I want to do. Just at this point, dedicate yourself to getting the absolute best grades you can in science and math, and taking those courses and getting that extra help or forming a team, and then the rest will come.
You might think that women who sit up here always knew which way to go when presented with a fork in the road, left or right. We just knew. We were just supposed to be here. And for me, it's not that way. I need a lot of help and support. I love advice. I like to understand how it was for other people. I urge you to go to our NASA website, women.nasa.gov, and you will see actually these really cool interview videos of women telling their stories of how they ended up in the jobs that they ended up in. I think they're really marvelous, and also a new mentoring program that we have. It's a pilot program this summer at NASA. We're going to take 20 girls. They can apply. Anybody can apply, grades 5 through 8, and we set them up with a NASA mentor. They don't have to be near a NASA site. It's all virtual. It's a program that happens this summer, and because we've discovered that women, girls, often need a guiding hand to show them the kinds of things they can do.
I feel like the girls in the video gave some of the really best advice. Do it in teams, find something you're excited about, don't give up, keep trying. If the first idea doesn't work, those are all really fundamental great advice. One more thing that I think that I've learned from just the research and being in this community of folks who are concerned about this is that one of, I think, the deep problems that is an obstacle to girls getting into these fields is that girls tend to underestimate how well they're doing. If they go look at kids in a math classroom or a science classroom and they ask girls, how are you doing in this class? The girls will tend to systematically underrate how well they're doing. And if they go ask the boys will systematically overestimate how well they're doing. And so when you're in that environment, it's sort of easy to look around and say, oh my gosh, all these guys are doing so well. I am not doing so well. Like, it is easy to sort of lose heart or psych yourself out. And so I'm here to say, don't psych yourself out. Give it a chance. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to believe in yourself. I had lunch last weekend with a wonderful woman engineer who I would love to hire for Facebook. Been trying to steal her away from another company. And she told me that she spent her entire computer science degree throughout university convinced that she was on the verge of failing out in every class. And when she finally graduated, she actually graduated in the top 5% of her class. So, so that's my advice to you is believe in yourself. And even when it's hard to believe in yourself, fake it till you make it. Just keep going. Even if you don't believe, just do it anyway.
Yeah. What I have to say is basically, you may not know who you are right now. You may not know what stage you're in your life, but just know that you know where you're going. Know that you need to have a plan, and that plan is, it's okay if you get off course sometimes, but just make sure that, you know, you might consult with your mother, or if you have a mentor. It's really important to have a mentor that you can sit down and talk about your plan for life. And so don't get discouraged if you go off course, because you're always will end up where you're supposed to be. And the last thing that I want to say is you have the right to prepare for interesting work and economic independence.
Okay. All right, and Dr. Hernandez?
Well said. So I think what I would say is nobody can take your dreams away from you. You have the right to achieve those dreams. And every one of you has dreams right now, and my hope is that you're going to keep following them because you have the ability to be successful. You really do. I really believe that, and what's going to make that, I think, even more real for you is find a college or a university that has a great support system. There are some schools that do not focus on girls achieving or women achieving in their programs the way that I think we should be doing. So really do your homework and look for those scholarships. There are tons of STEM scholarships out there, so don't avoid, getting somebody else to pay for your college. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, great advice. Now it's your turn. Questions from the audience? Raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over. Okay, we have one over here and one back here, or in the back.
My name is Olivia Sullivan. I'm a student at Thomas Jefferson High School, and I was wondering what's the most challenging part of your occupations?
I think it's dealing with failure. I think you have to kind of, a lot of times to build something great, very few of us are lucky enough to have exactly the right idea on the first try. And so the nature of creating something, whether it's technological or otherwise, is to keep persisting and trying again, even when your first idea doesn't work out. And it's actually really hard to take risks. This is why I think so many companies, talk about how hard it is to innovate. It's not because they're short of smart people with good ideas. It's that after you've tried your first good idea and it didn't work out, and then maybe you tried your second good idea and that didn't work out, you kind of give up and want to do the safe, obvious thing instead of trying risky, unknown how it's going to work out things. And so I think realizing that failure is normal, that actually if it were clear what to do next, it would be obvious. It wouldn't be innovation. And so it is absolutely impossible to tell the difference between a great innovative idea and a terrible idea. They're going to look exactly the same before you try them. And so there is no way to avoid failure if you're going to swing for the fences. So you've just got to kind of fail as fast as you can and work with a team of people who support each other through it and keep going and know that that's an expected part of the process.
I love that. We're going to try to keep it to one person answering. I know every one of us could, so we can get as many of your questions in as possible. So let's take one more from the audience, and then I'll go to our internet universe here. And I don't have the mic, so I can't call on you. Yeah. Sorry,
Hi, my name is Princess Rockefeller. I'm a student at McKinley Technology High School. And my question is, for Engineers Without Borders, do you ever get to have experience working with Doctors Without Borders?
Actually, Engineers Without Borders is not affiliated with Doctors Without Borders, but we do some of the same kind of work. So again, just pressing the whole service attitude as well as engineering. A lot of women, we're very sensitive and emotional, and we like to help people out. So that's what I took towards engineering, and I used that in order for me to like be motivated and stay and finish successfully and graduate.
Here's one from our Twitterverse. It's from @LisaK Miles. And Dr. Hernandez, maybe you should go first at least. What is the most important class a high school girl should take for a STEM career?
Well, you definitely want to keep taking a lot of your math, chemistry, physics, biology classes as much as you can, because the reality is the stronger your high school experience is, the more successful you're going to be in the community college or university setting, because you really need to have a strong foundation. And again, what I would emphasize about community college is if you don't have a strong math or science background, but you've now decided, I didn't, I'm a senior now and I didn't take as much math as I thought I should, you could still go to a community college and get that support and foundation and still be very successful in your career.
I'd just like to piggyback on that. We all know here, I don't mean to belittle your answer at all, that we should take math, but what if you don't like math? Mm-hmm. And what if you don't feel like you're good at math? Now, actually, math works for me. Physics is really non-intuitive and very hard for me, and I don't like it. And does that mean it's not for me? I mean, look at my job. It has to be there, and math has to be there. And there are things like physics for me that just because it's hard for me doesn't mean it's not for me. It means that I have to have the courage to ask for more explanations and say, could you just tell me about that in a different way? I didn't understand it. I can understand it, but sometimes I need more or different explanations, and that I have to actually do every homework problem and maybe more. So just because it's hard for you, and actually even if you plain old don't like it, math and science are for you because we all live on the planet, and we learned about what the solutions come from. They come from engineering.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Okay, great. I'm going to throw this one out there because I think every one of you are pioneers. So this is a question about pioneering. This is from Jody in New Hampshire. And Jody says, girls who live in rural areas and attend small high schools, such as those in our region of northern New Hampshire, may not feel as if they have the same opportunities as the girls in your audience. What kinds of encouragement can you offer girls from small rural high schools who want to pursue STEM careers?
I'll answer that one. What I would say to her is that there's the computer, there's the World Wide Web, there's the internet. And because you have that tool, because technology is moving so fast and social media is out there, you can get anything that you need on the internet. So if you feel like you're missing out on opportunities, there's lots of things online that you can go to, lots of websites. Girls Incorporated is a website that you can go on. You can find more information about what Girls Incorporated does about STEM, which is a Build IT program. Facebook, I'm sure there's a lot of different opportunities as far as girls and women in STEM is concerned. So I just think that you should use all your resources in order to be connected to the outside world.
So just to include, National Science Foundation has some wonderful summer programs. So if you're in a rural area, you might get to go to Kalamazoo, Michigan, or MIT for the summer and learn about sciences. So kind of keep an eye on those things.
Very good.
And I would just say I'm a big believer in the virtual world. I'm a commuter. My husband and I have commuted for 20 years between Massachusetts and Texas. And so we often think about, video isn't everything, but we read stories over the phone, over Skype, try to think about what we can share. And this NASA program that I talked about, NASA Girls, is virtual mentoring. You can be anywhere. I guess we say in the country, but actually I don't know why it's limited to the country. You could be anywhere, you could get to a computer, and you could be part of this 5-week mentoring program.
Wow, that's cool. All right, questions? Yes. Then we're coming to the back here. Yes, tons of questions.
My name's Laura Jones. I run a girls program called Girls Excelling in Math and Science. What do you say to girls, or how can you help all of us who work with young girls, say to them who say, well, I'm afraid about getting into a highly disciplined field like math or science because I also want to have a life?
Great question.
I'll answer that one since I'm currently a college student. I still have a life, and in fact, I don't think of myself as a typical engineer because I ran for Miss College of Engineering, Architecture, and Computer Science, and I was a part of the homecoming court for about a year. So you can still have a life and still be in STEM. I was also in the marching band. I played clarinet and trumpet as well. So I was doing that as well. So you can still be a pretty lady, a lady that is involved socially. I'm also a member of a sorority. So there are a lot of different things that women in STEM can do for you to be able to balance out your academic and your social life. And the key is balancing social and academic. And once you've got that key, you'll be successful. You'll be good.
Wow. You're in a lot. She has a lot of life, I think. Congratulations, Bianca. Okay, we'll take one more from the audience.
Hello, my name is Crystal Romeo. I'm a graduate student, doctoral student at the University of Maryland studying environmental science. And I can personally say that I wouldn't be in that role if it wasn't for mentors. Can you all speak a little bit on the importance of these young girls developing relationships with women who are already in STEM fields and the importance of women in the STEM fields reaching back and maintaining relationships with young women?
And that's such an important topic. Everyone should feel free to take a couple of minutes on that. So why don't we go across our panel, start with Dr. Coleman.
Well, I mentioned the mentoring program that's a pilot this summer. I mean, that's why NASA is doing this, is that we're seeing that with girls, they often need someone to look them in the eyes, whether it's over the internet or not, and say, you know, you can do this. Let's talk about what you can do. I know it's actually important for me. You know, I am somebody that just deals better with a little advice, a little help, a little sharing. We have a lot of really neat women at NASA. When I first was thinking about applying to be an astronaut, Dr. Kathy Sullivan, who's now a deputy at NOAA and a former astronaut, she took, half an hour to talk to me at the science fair. And it meant the world to me. It made me feel like I was worth this astronaut talking to me for half an hour about how I could apply. And I actually need that kind of confidence building, that kind of reinforcement. And so I urge the girls that are here to realize that wanting to reach out, even if it seems like the stereotypical guys don't seem to need that, you reach out, you grab what you need, because you are going somewhere. And for the folks that are adults in the room, realize that it is our job to look around for the people that don't know how to ask and look at them and try to figure out what they need and what you can do for them so they can be part of the future.
I think it's hugely important that the women who are in these fields really model for girls that these are jobs and careers for women too. And I think it's so difficult when I read my children's storybooks and all the nurses are women and all the doctors are men. And what does that tell her when she's a little girl and grows up with that kind of vision that these fields are not for her? And my own field, computer science, is actually one of the worst for gender balance. So STEM as a whole is maybe 30-40% female. Computer science graduates are actually between 15 and 20% female. And so when a girl gets to college and thinks, well, maybe, I don't know for sure, I didn't know for sure, but I'll try it. I'll take that first computer science class. And she walks in that room and most of the people are men, are not women. It is easy to have this kind of instinctive reaction of, oh my goodness, I don't belong here. Have you ever walked into the wrong bathroom by accident? Right? Like, oops, I don't belong here. That can be your feeling when you walk into a room where absolutely no one looks like you or very few people look like you. And so I think that one of the most important values of role models is just so you can believe that this is something that people like you can do. And when I go talk to the women who are in my field, what I find is very often there's a family member, can be the mom or the dad, or an aunt or an uncle or a cousin. There's someone who went before them in the field. So even if they're not looking around the classroom and seeing folks like them, they know of someone in that field that preceded them. And so I think what we've got to do as the women in this field, and what all of us are doing here today, is really standing up and putting ourselves out there so that there are people like you doing this, and that you can do this too.
So what I call my cabinet of mentors is my me cabinet. And so basically in my me cabinet, there are different types of people in my me cabinet that serve different purposes in my life. So I might have a mentor that helps me academically, so that may be one of my professors at school, and there may be someone that helps me personally with just my financial decisions or deciding, well, what internship am I going to do this summer? What's better than this option? So I really encourage everyone, even if you're older. I mean, mentors are great for everything, and having mentor has really helped me in my life because I was raised by my father. So having a female mentor in my life has really helped with just developing me into a young lady. And I would also encourage you to get a male mentor because the world is mixed with males and females. So always having a male perspective gives you a true and honest perspective as well of the world. So a balance.
Thank you. I'm going to do a little shout out for 3 of our faculty. Mary O'Brien teaches chemistry, Rachel Wade teaches physics, and Kay Latimer teaches information technology. Every one of those women, I see them all over campus with students around them. I hear students at meetings, give them accolades. You have to connect with faculty. And that to me is a very powerful mentor for you because not only do they know the field, they know the pathways. So if you're thinking, well, I don't really like math, I'm not really sure I want to go quite that math route, they can help you figure out which of those science fields are going to be most complementary for you. And they also will help give you encouragement. So I think that's a really important part of mentors. The other part, at the other end, when you graduate, there's such a need for that informal networking. Mentors will probably know people in the field and help you get jobs.
Okay, and we have time for one more question, so I'm going to take it, I guess, from one of our web questions, and I'm trying to pick one that there was one that was kind of fun. I'll just ask if you don't answer it, which is what role does TV play in the stereotypes about women? Maybe we can all think on that a little bit. But, interestingly enough, we heard not long ago that CSI has done more for re-engaging a lot of young people in science and math. So I'm always glad when there are females on CSI who are doing some of the scientific inquiry along with the males. But I guess we'll end with this one, which is, does the panel have any advice for graduating students? And I'm going to go even before graduation. I think many of you touched on this, who are looking for positions in these fields. So obviously, at the end of the day, believe us, the parents in the room want you to get a job. That's important to us. But how about when you start thinking about the career end? And Bianca, I'm going to start with you, but I'd ask everybody to sort of close out on this topic, which is you should always be thinking a little bit about career planning. And how about some advice?
Some advice on career planning. So me, I'm a person, I like to have my hands in everything. I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. So just deciding on what specific career I wanted to do was a little tough. But like I said, I had mentors to help me make really good decisions. In addition to that, a lot of times when you're graduating from high school and even from college, people always want to press you to work in corporate America or work, somewhere else instead of another option, which is going back to school. And so for me, I want to be an expert in my field, so I decided to, sort of push the, corporate 9-to-5 thing aside for a while, and then I decided to get a master's in environmental engineering. So I think gaining as much knowledge as you can is always great, but also make sure that you're able to use that knowledge after you're done gaining it.
Cool. Awesome.
One thing Facebook really looks for in the college students that we hire, and by the way, about 30 to 40% of the engineers we hire every year, we hire straight out of college. So those are absolutely, you are qualified with a computer science degree after college to go work for any of the great software companies in this country. One thing we always look for is good summer internship experience. So don't wait till your senior year to start thinking about this. Use those summer internships, both because they'll help you get jobs later on, but actually also because they'll help you figure out what you might want to do, what you might want to be. If you try a summer internship with an enterprise software company or a consumer software company, or you will get some sense of what you're passionate about, and your own passion for the field is a lot of what qualifies you, is a lot of what gets a company excited about you and wanting to hire you. Another thing that we have the luxury of in the software world is really side projects. So even if you are, closing in on senior year, maybe haven't had all the internship experience that you want, maybe it took you a while to figure out what you wanted to do. I love anything that shows that you have care for and passion for the subject. So did you go write your own iPhone app? Did you go make your own Facebook application? Did you go contribute to an open source project? if you are not in computer science but one of the other STEM fields, did you do these projects on the side that were not just dictated to you by the classroom or the academic environment, but that showed your own personal passion for the sphere? And those kind of things really make you stand out.
Dr. Cole? So I'll address the nuts and bolts of, we talked about goals to have, and to do any of the things that we've been talking about here, you're going to have to apply. First of all, no one's going to just pick you. Nobody called me, and I applied. And for internships, you're going to have to apply. You're going to have to write down on a piece of paper or on a computer why somebody reading it fast and skimming, is going to want to know more about you. And so we talked about science, technology, engineering, math. Writing and communicating are a big part of what you need to think about, because you need to make those opportunities for yourself, and it's just part of being in the field. And so think a lot about these applications. Think about how to represent what you do without, you don't want to be like a big braggart, but if you don't tell people about who you are, they won't know and they can't pick you. And let's say you're constrained at home and you are taking care of your little brother and sister. Well, why don't you write that up as how many hours a week? 20 hours a week, child care and tutoring. And then explain. You never want to misrepresent things, but realize that the things that you do are important to advertise to really interesting places like NASA, Facebook, community colleges, the programs that Bianca's talking about. So communication, got to do it.
Wow, thanks, Dr. Coleman.
And when you're babysitting, start doing science projects with them. So I have a homework assignment for you, because this is my piece of advice. Your family is probably a wealth of connections you didn't even think about. So in the next week, I want each of you to ask at least 2 or 3 relatives if they know somebody you could call and ask them about their job, or somebody you could call and ask if you could go shadow them in their job. How many of you are willing to do that homework assignment? Okay, almost everybody, a couple of shy ones, but I hope you'll all do that. Thank you.
Very nice. Well, and I'll just add 2 things. One, they both were in the answers that we heard, which are, first, anything you do as part of a team. I see we have a lot of scouts here. I bet a lot of you are part of different activities. You heard Dr. Coleman, I heard it from Jocelyn, Bianca, and Dr. Hernandez all say you work in teams. These courses are designed to be really hard. And if your idea is that you're going to sit in a room and figure it out by yourself because you're really smart, otherwise you probably wouldn't be in science and math, you're smart, you're not going to make it, no matter how smart you are. And you're going to feel as though everyone else is doing well and maybe you're not doing so well. So anything you do right now to get used to being in teams and working together, sometimes leadership is good, sometimes not being the leader, but learning how to contribute and work in that dynamic is going to be really helpful. And that brings me to my other point. Many of you are lucky. Your mentors, your teachers, all understand how important it is to find these opportunities for you. But there are lots of girls out there who aren't as fortunate. So when you're out on social media or other places, make sure and tell other girls about opportunities that might be out there for them, because not everybody is as fortunate as you are, or as the folks who are clued in because they have great schools or great teachers at those schools to be leaders. So please join me, speaking of leaders, in thanking our amazing panel. And let's do it, Dr. Katie Coleman, Jocelyn Goldfein, Bianca Bailey, and Dr. Jean Hernandez. Thank you all very much for joining us. Stay excited, and for more information, please go on the White House website, whitehouse.gov, and click on the button for White House Council on Women and Girls. There's lots of things going on. Of course, we're all about science and math, but there's lots of things going on as well. Thanks very much. More women and men studying science as a way to make our lives better. Now, I want to save as much time for our panel discussion as possible, so let me stop there to introduce our video. It's titled Girls in STEM. This tells the story of the brilliant young women scientists and engineers who participated in the White House Science Fair not too long ago. It was really something to see. I'm very glad to share it with you and to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
The belief that we belong on the cutting edge of innovation, that's an idea as old as America itself. It's in our DNA. We know that what these young people are doing, this is what's going to make a difference in this country over the long haul.
I created a nanoparticle that's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of cancer treatment.
A UV light lunchbox that kills bacteria off fruits and food.
My project was I actually built a detection method for buried landmines.
I did my project on sheep genetics and Cotswold sheep, the natural color versus the white genes.
The smartphone works with a Bluetooth-enabled heart rate monitor to detect if there's a medical emergency and then notify contacts with where you are, what happened, what's going on, where they can find you.
We created an adaptive hand device for a girl in Georgia.
So did you play the game or you designed the game?
I designed the game.
You designed the game.
Teams that submitted projects to EPA's People, Prosperity, and the Planet competition. In the last 2 years, we've seen some great examples of young women scientists at the White House Science Fair. And I took note last year when young women took top honors in all 3 age groups in the first ever Google Science Fair. So the future is looking very, very bright indeed. Each year, a new class of young women graduates from America's colleges and universities. They're eager to take their jobs and places in math and science, to become doctors, to become engineers, to become CEOs, to become teachers. But even with all that progress, you all know we still have work to do. For one thing, we know that adding more women to STEM fields would undoubtedly benefit our economy. It's clear that much of our future prosperity rests on new innovations and advances in scientific and technical and medical fields. President Obama has made it a priority to invest in research and development, not only because American scientists and inventors are doing work critical on public health or energy security, but also because we know that new ideas lead to new opportunities for American workers. Think of how far we've already come. Think how many next big things them to seek careers in STEM fields. Now, like the women in this room, I've had an interest in math and science since I was young. At the time, it didn't strike me as all that unique. You see, I went to an all-girls school in my hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana, and like all of the other young women in my class, I tried my hardest, I worked hard, and did as well as I could. It really wasn't until college, when I began studying chemical engineering at Tulane University, that I found myself, in most cases, to be one of the few women in my class. As you can imagine, it was a bit of a shock for me. After going to an all-girls high school, I saw much the same thing as I went on to pursue my master's degree in chemical engineering at Princeton University, where my classmates and instructors were also predominantly men. Now, things have gotten better. When I was a student, about 154,000 women were pursuing master's degrees in science and engineering across the country. By 2003, about 20 years later, that number had grown to 270,000. 50 years ago, 10% of the doctorates in science and engineering went to women. Today, that number has grown to 40%. This weekend, I spent some time talking to brilliant young college women who were part of scientific things we've already seen. And for most of our history, half of our team of innovators was sitting on the sidelines. It's exciting to imagine what can happen once those talents are also unleashed. Bringing more women into STEM fields can also have a positive effect on science itself. Whenever I meet and talk with young women, I encourage them to throw out their stereotypical ideas of what a scientist is supposed to look like. Being a scientist doesn't have to mean, although it can mean, but it doesn't have to mean being in a lab all by yourself, happiest with your test tubes. It can mean that if that's what you want it to mean. But it can also mean getting out in the community and talking to people and working with them to improve their lives. It can mean taking action to protect children's health. It can mean helping impoverished communities around the world get access to clean water, or finding solutions to rebuild ecosystems for endangered species. The traditional impression of science and scientists is that they are detached and maybe a little antisocial. But the truth is that science touches our daily lives, and we need. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the White House. And welcome to this exciting roundtable on STEM for girls in STEM roundtable. I want to start by thanking the White House Council on Women and Girls and Sarah Horowitz, who has invited most of you here and made sure that we put this together, invited me here. I am thrilled to be here today to be able to host what I think is going to be a wonderful discussion. We're so happy to have you here, but also happy to have all the folks who are watching us online and in their classrooms. We're very glad that you can join us as well. Let me also say how exciting it is to see so many incredible young leaders and young women in our audience today. As many of you may know, I am the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I know it's a mouthful. We call it EPA. At the EPA, science is the backbone of every decision we make and every action that we take. With that in mind, it should come as no surprise that I believe STEM education is critical to our country's future, and that as a woman scientist, bringing more young women into STEM is something I'm very passionate about. There is a great need, but it's also a great opportunity to engage young women in STEM education and encourage